Hi, it's Steve Cochran. Welcome to Live from my office. Before we get started, and we will in just a moment, a big thank you to Woody and the gang at Woody Buick GMC in Naperville and Gurnee. Here in the greater Chicago area, there's nobody better. We're coming up on the auto show where you can go and you can look at all the cars. You can go, I want that one. No, I want that one. You can drive them in a couple of places. And look, the Buick that you're thinking of, if you're thinking of Buick, it's not your mom's or your dad's Buick. They're cool. I'm telling you. I drive one. I drive a beautiful Buick SUV that I love, and you can't have it, but you can get one of your own. At Woody Buick GMC in Naperville and Gurnee, just search Woody Buick. You'll find it. You know, you can decide which one's closer to you, or check it out at the auto show, then go. We have been Woody Buick customers for years and years and years, and simply the best service people I've ever seen. And that's the deal. These cars are they're made much better than they were when I was a kid. And because of that, the service department's never been more important. And they're great. They're just fabulous. Can't say enough good things. But it's not really for me to say, right? Woody, what's on your mind?
Woody here, Woody Buick GMC, Naperville and Gurnee, Chicagoland's largest selection of the hot new Buick, Envista, and Encore GX. Search Woody Buick GMC, Naperville and Gurnee, and see for yourself. Hope to see you soon, Woody. Buick, exceptional car design.
So yeah, get a hold of Woody and the gang at Woody Buick GMC in Naperville and Gurnee. I feel like you may have left something else out. Woody?
Woody here, Woody Buick GMC, Naperville and Gurnee, Chicagoland's largest selection of GMC Sierras, Yukon, and Acadias. Search Woody Buick GMC, Naperville, Gurnee, and see for yourself. Hope to see you soon, Woody. GMC, we're professional grade.
All right, search Woody Buick GMC, and thank you for sponsoring Live from my office. Welcome, and I'm very happy to have one of my old friends and one of the greatest minds in politics on the show today, Eric Adelstein. For all those years on WGN, Pat Brady and Eric Adelstein were weekly guests, and they would come on. And if there was one segment that we got constant positive praise for, it was when Pat and Eric were in, because it was two guys with differing political views who didn't shout at each other, who didn't scream at each other, who didn't arrest each other, who didn't have to hide from the Epstein files. They just talked, and they called out their own parties as well. Eric's a Democrat, Pat's a Republican, or at least a real Republican, not a Trumplican. And those are great days. So I'm glad to have Eric Adelstein back. He is the guest today, and we'll get into all of it coming up here in just a little bit. Read my Substack, please, if you will. You know, I haven't been sleeping well. You can probably tell by the bags under my eyes. And I actually have a transcript from one of my dreams up on Substack. You can check that out. It's stevecochran.substack.com. Obviously, subscribe to YouTube so you can watch us do what we do. It's a cool new thing. You know, when I was coming up in radio, watching guys on the radio wasn't that exciting. But now watching people talk seems to be a thing. So you can subscribe at YouTube, and I hope you will. Matter of fact, do it. Just do it. It's good for you. And you can also follow me on all the social medias. You can get the podcast, the audio version, on the Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. More stand-up shows coming. Always check back with CochranShow.com. That's my website. And at CochranShow.com, we update what we've done or what we are doing. So you can always look there. You can tell I'm getting over a cold. The guest, as I mentioned, is Eric Adelstein. I know what I forgot to mention. One of our other sponsors, and sponsor forever, the great people at Apt Electronics, the Apt Boys, and also my friend Steve Shapiro. What I have here is a beautiful Apt gift card. Is that going to take? Yeah, you can see that. An Apt gift card. And that's yours. How do you become a winner? You look like a winner to me. But what you do is you just remember the phrase that pays, which I'm about to tell you, and then send it to me. Now, you might think, well, why don't you remember your own phrase that pays? Oh, I know what it is. The question is, do you? It proves that you listen. And if you send me an email to thecochranshow@gmail.com with the phrase that pays and your mailing address, I'll send you an Apt gift card. While supplies last. Again, that is the phrase that pays. And let's make it this week, because everybody gets so tired of politics. Let's make it, is it over yet? Is it over yet? Put that in an email to thecochranshow@gmail.com with your mailing address, and you'll win, while supplies last, an Apt gift card. And you'll win, just like Deborah Wolf from Plainfield won last week. What was last week's phrase that pays? Oh, yeah. It was, Mother Nature, why do you hate us? See, they're all very relevant and very timely. So is it over yet? That's a phrase that pays. Put it in an email to thecochronshow@gmail.com. And let's see if we can get you an app gift card. Thank you, Woody Buick. Thank you, Apt. And thank you for listening and watching on YouTube. Let's do it now. The guest is Eric Adelstein here live from my office. You know, I'm a lucky guy, and once in a while I get to reunite with old friends. If you're watching on YouTube, on your left is the handsome, talented, powerful co-founder, co-partner of AL Media Strategies, Eric Adelstein. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Steve. It's great to see you.
Nice to see you again. And on the right is an elderly man with a pale complexion who hasn't been out in the sun much since he got his knee surgery. That would be me. Welcome to Live from my office. If you're just listening, good for you. And thank you wherever you're listening or watching. And please subscribe and do all those things. Nice to have you back. I want to talk about the Democrats. You know better than anybody. But let me start local if I can. Eric and I are in Chicago. And the Senate race here is a big deal with Senator Durbin stepping down. You helped invent and introduce Raja Krishnamoorthy, who has done a great job, in my opinion, in the House. And he's running for the Senate. I think a lot of people probably didn't give him a big chance when Pritzker got behind his Lieutenant Governor Stratton immediately. But he looks like he's in it to win it.
He's run a great campaign. I mean, he's been a tenacious fighter. I think that he's gotten great response statewide. And, you know, here we are 5.5 weeks from the primary. He's got a lead in the polls. But, you know, this super PAC that the governor's funding for his lieutenant governor is getting some money, and they're going to start spending in the next few weeks. So we'll see what happens. But I think by most accounts, Stratton has run a very uninspiring campaign. I think people who were excited about her candidacy, given the endorsements, have been underwhelmed both by her policy positions, by her inability to raise real resources, by being able to put together a coalition. And Raj has been all over the state. I mean, I've never seen a guy work harder, Steve. And, you know, this ICE stuff in particular, where, you know, he's an immigrant. His parents came here when he was months old. And there were people in his district, that American citizens, that were taken to Broadview. And I think that, you know, he's just been really outraged, like a lot of us have, by what happened in Minneapolis and the stuff going on in Chicago. So
I think one of the smart things that you guys have done in support of Raj is bring out his backstory, because people don't know his backstory, and the fact that he was a poor kid, and really a very poor kid, and worked very hard to become self-made and wanted to serve. Yeah. And as I said, in my opinion, done a great job in the House so far in a ridiculous climate to try to get anything done. One of the more attractive features for him in the Senate is I think he replaces Durbin in a nice way if he wins, in that he is more than willing to work with good ideas from the Republicans.
Yeah, for sure. And he's somebody who doesn't think one party or the other has a, you know, monopoly on ideas, wants to get things done, has done that in the House, has relationships across the aisle. But at the same time, I think has been a really, really strong voice against Trump, standing up to him on some of the outrageous stuff and really holding him to account. So it's going to be an interesting final few weeks. But you're right. You know, I think the origin story, just if I could, for those who haven't been paying attention, you know, his parents emigrated. His father was a teacher, a professor, and they went to Buffalo, New York, your old neck of the woods.
Yeah, sure.
And the recession of the 70s hit, and his father was laid off. And they really had no source of income for a while. They went on food stamps. They got in public housing, and that gave them a chance to move back into the middle class, which it's what the point of these government programs are, right? And then when you see someone, not that people should be on them their whole lives, but that they should be a bridge to help people during tough times. And what
completely
with Trump is, you know, yanking that out from everyone, not just the healthcare stuff, but the SNAP and some of this other stuff that's just, and you know, Raja said that without that stuff, his family never would have made it back. Then they ended up moving to Peoria. Dad was a professor at Bradley for a long time, and, you know, raised 2 kids and told those 2 kids, sounds like a cliche, but, you know, in this moment where it's easy to talk down about our country, it's still sort of the immigrant message and the immigrant story that it loves it as much as it is, because it gave them opportunity. And he told his 2 boys every day at the dinner table, this country's been great to us. and you got to do something to make sure it's great for other people in the future.
It's great. It's great. Anything's possible. Still, even in the mess that we're in. And standing up to Trump, of course, is the biggest deal that you could possibly have. I have never in my life, and you've heard my sermon more times than you can count about turnout and about standing up to him. I've never seen greater cowardice and greater malpractice in my life than the Republican side of Congress. Not even to talk about the Supreme Court, but for the House is a zoo, to put it mildly. But for the United States Senate to not hold up their end of the bargain and to back down and to suck up to Trump on every level is absolutely outrageous.
Steve, we talked about this 10 years ago, you and me and Pat Brady. And when Trump first got elected, we said the key is going to be those Republicans in the Senate. Are they going to enable him, or are they going to show this is a co-equal branch of government and stand up to the biggest outrages? And you hit the nail on the head. They have completely capitulated. And I'm hopeful that when the history of this awful period of time is written, they will be tagged as the enablers who allowed him to walk on that second impeachment, who allowed him to pass these awful budgets, who allowed him to do unconstitutional things and didn't hold him to account. It's an outrage, and it's basically the reason he's been able to survive. I mean, go back to go back to that second impeachment. When they all said he created the insurrection on January 6th, even McConnell. And they said, but you know what? We're going to let the criminal courts take care of this, and he's never going to run for office again. When if they had convicted him, he really would have never run for office again. Wouldn't be in this mess.
Yeah, and McConnell knew at that point what we all know now and knew then to some extent, and that is he could have it both ways. He could say he stood up to Trump when he made that speech, but that he took a legal stance, which every legal scholar will tell you was just bullshit. That there was no legal bearing for the Senate to block him, so they couldn't vote to convict. So bring that full forward here. If the Democrats do win the House and the Senate back, will they impeach him a third time, and will they convict?
Great question. The conviction's hard in the Senate, given the Senate rules, filibuster, all that crap. I think he deserves to be impeached and removed. If any president in American history did, he does.
100%.
He's a criminal. He's a convicted felon. He doesn't care about anybody other than himself.
Completely.
I think he's a black mark on this country and should be removed. So I hope they will do that. Whether they will or not, I mean, the Senate's going to be a harder lift. I think I'm pretty confident sitting here in February that the House is definitely within reach. The Senate's going to be tougher.
You need to flip the House with some margin. Is that there?
Yes, I believe it is. I think there's a lot of seats in play that we don't even think about right now, where I think in a typical midterm election, you're looking at, 30, 40 seats that are competitive. I think we're going to be in the 80 to 100 that could be competitive.
Wow. The Senate itself, are too many of those seats baked in? They're not flippable?
Well, take for example, Ohio, where Sherrod Brown's running again. Great recruit. Democrats got the candidate they wanted, but Ohio keeps trending away from Democrats, and it's just becoming harder and harder to win there. I'm not completely bearish on it. I think there's a shot at it, but I don't think you can count that in the win column. I think we pick up North Carolina. I think we got a great chance in Maine to take out Collins. We're doing Governor Mills up there. So I think those could be two pickups, but the Ohio becomes tough, and you got to hold on to Michigan. Is Texas in play? Is it not in play? Depends on, I think, the Republican primary. If Ken Paxton wins that primary, I think Democrats actually have a legitimate shot. I think if Senator Cornyn wins, then it's a little tougher.
The level of dishonesty for the casual voter is key to this. How do you, as a message maker, how do you make that clear to people without making this all about Trump as opposed to what your candidates can do?
It's really hard, Steve. And, this age of disinformation, and obviously with the onset of AI and, false narratives and everyone having their own truths, it becomes more and more challenging. I mean, I still maintain that authenticity matters and true connection matters, because that's how we're wired as humans. It's primordial. for us. It's in the storytelling. It's in the, those sort of reptilian parts of our brain and others that respond to emotion. It's why Trump's been successful on the dark side of that in scaring people and using fear and using divisive language and divisive policy. But I think the task for any communicator, whether you're an influencer or an ad maker like us, is how do you find that authentic voice that connects with people? I think it's what we've tried to do with Raja in telling his story, in talking about some of his struggles as a young person. And I think one of the research pieces we've been finding is, as you talk to voters, they want you to stand up to Trump, but they want to hear what you're going to do.
Right.
Like, okay, every Democrat's going to stand up to him, but what does that mean? He's like a colossus running across this land, and is anybody really going to be able to do anything that's going to check him?
Well, every time I see a political commercial that says Trump's a bad guy, Trump sucks, I go, yeah, we know. We knew it 5 years ago. We knew it 8 years ago. So let's establish whatever he's done lately that people need to know, but also exactly what you just said. What's your part in this? How are you going to make change?
Right. And, I think there's opportunity here. Obviously, there's challenges. I think we're going to get into it on where the Democratic Party is and where it's going. But there's no Republican Party. There's just a cult to one man, right? It's just a complete sycophants to whatever he wants.
Well, it's remarkable, really. I mean, because I think it started out with, kissing ass because they wanted to save their own jobs. Now I think there's fear, legitimate or illegitimate, that they could be threatened or hurt if they go up against him, let alone losing their jobs. But when you and I grew up and when you first got into this business, this was the stuff that they didn't say out loud. They're more than willing to say it out loud now. Murkowski said, yeah, we're all afraid. Well, then get out. Then you're not up for the job.
I totally agree. I mean, if in this moment you're afraid and you're willing to take actions that cater to that fear, then get out of office. Let other people who our profiles encourage step up.
We live in a very difficult time, too, in regards to my end of this, which is what used to be the media and whatever the media is today. I couldn't define it for you as we sit here. And people don't know what's the source to go to. What do you believe in? What do you not believe in? But the shiny thing that is being talked about way too much every day is the presidential election. It's 2028. It's too far out. There's a million things that are going to move and change between now and then, but people are going to talk about it. Does that talk and the fact that the physics of that is going to continue, whether I like it or not, does that move the midterms at all?
I don't think it moves the midterms as much as just the present moment and the outrage that people feel. I think there's a collective sense of wanting to send a message to Trump, both Democrats and independents, and increasingly some Republicans, if you look at some of these recent polls on, the ICE crimes that they're committing. So I think 2028 is a great parlor game. As you said, it's way too early to really know how it's going to play out. I retired from the prediction business in 2016.
Yeah. Amen.
I told everybody that
there's no way.
No way. I used to come home. I think I told you the story. I used to come home. My wife, who incredibly adept observer, but not particularly interested in politics, would say, "Are you sure it's okay?" She'd look over her glasses. "You sure it's okay?" I'd be like, "It's fine." She'd be like, "Doesn't feel okay." And, she was right. And it hasn't been okay. So to try to predict what's going to happen in 2028, I don't know. I think the energy, if people want to stand up to this guy, we still have elections. We still have the ability to throw people out of office. And I think Republicans always do worse in this Trump era when Trump's not on the ballot. And I think it's going to be a situation where people are going to take it out on him. I mean, look at these specials that are coming. Look at that election in Texas. District
flip to a Dem.
Trump won by 17 points and Democrat won that now. I think people are fed up. I think they've had enough. And, I'm hopeful they're going to send that message this fall.
Most of the deep red states are where Republicans who have voted for him twice are getting hurt the most, farmers and regular folks who bust their ass every day. The question is, will they change? Because I don't know about you, but I run into a lot of very smart, successful Republicans who say, yeah, he sucks. He's terrible, but I'll never vote for a Democrat.
Yeah, it's true. And I think the Democratic Party in many ways has been our own worst enemy. I think that it's the sentence I hate the most is when people say to me, why don't Democrats? I say, stop right there. Because it's the old Will Rogers line, right? Like I'm not a member of an organized party. I'm a Democrat. Like
Right.
there's no like the Democratic Party. There's just a bunch of factions and different sort of ideological camps and whatnot. But I think we've really, in some ways, the far left has become our own worst enemy. I think in many ways, I think we underestimate, Steve, how radicalized the Trump era has made people on the other side legitimately. And I understand the reasons for that. But, I think we still have to have a governing philosophy, and it can't just be the left's version of tear it all down, the left's version of they're screwing you, take down the oligarchs, they've rigged the system against you. Yes, a lot of that's true to some extent. It's been true in America a long time. But what's the governing philosophy? Like, what are we trying to do and accomplish?
Well, we've got an example, kind of a microcosm here in Chicago of, in my opinion, what the Dems need to do nationally. And that is we've got a mayor with a 6% approval rate. Sexually transmitted disease has a higher approval rate than Brandon Johnson. And he may run again, he may not.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is there was an incredibly low turnout when he ran against Paul Vallis. And I was on a very hardcore Republican station as the moderate voice in the morning, WLS at the time. And I ran up against this constantly, this I won't vote for a Democrat. And my point to Republicans was, look, you live in a city that's governed by the Democratic Party until further notice. Pick the Democrat that's going to serve you better.
Right.
That's a national message that has to get out, too, to appeal to moderates. Is it possible?
I think it is. I mean, we just did the Virginia governor's race where we elected Abigail Spanberger, the new governor of Virginia. Won the biggest election Democrats ever won, got over 57% of the vote. Moderate Democrat, if you want to put it on an ideological scale, appealed to lots of independents. There were lots of Republicans that did vote for her. I think that, there's a lesson in that. And she was strong as anyone talking about standing up to Trump, but she was also pragmatic in saying we have to push forward a real agenda here to get things done for people in Virginia. So is it doable to appeal to those people who are saying never will I vote for a Democrat? Yeah, if you have the right message, if you have the right candidate, if you have the right personality, we can absolutely do it.
It's a struggle that you must have every day, and it makes me crazy. And if I had any hair left, I'd lose it over this. But the idea that people don't take common sense beyond their emotional borders. I'm pissed off about this. I'm going to stop thinking about it when you get to that point, as opposed to extending it out to say this is why Trump is terrible, or this is what could happen if I don't actually vote for anybody because I don't like Democrats. All of those things. Understanding what democracy is, how it works. You're never going to get your way completely. That's the system was set up with that intention. All of those things. And yet we continue to just get mired on this treadmill of my shit matters and yours doesn't.
Yeah. It's, in some ways, sadly, if you take the dark side of where America is today, Trump's the perfect candidate for that. Selfishness. Everyone's, what about mine? I don't care about the other person. It's all about power. It's sort of the id and the superego here. And we've got so much of the one without the other in this moment. And we got to get back to it. And, we all know this. I'm not saying anything particularly original. Social media has exacerbated it. The algorithms make it worse. And we got to get back to having conversations with each other and with people we disagree with. It sounds trite and cliche, but there is no democracy, Steve, if we can't agree on a basic set of facts, if we can't agree on a basic origin story, and if we can't disagree without being enemies. It doesn't work.
The immaturity of it's crazy. You and I are both dads. Can you imagine if we raised our kids that way?
No.
Hold your breath until you get your way.
Yeah.
Stomp your feet until you get your way. Make the most noise until you get your way. Be a terrible kid and you'll eventually get your way. That's the message we send.
It is. And you see the behavior trickle down from what Trump does to the rest of society. You talk to teachers, kids are acting out more than ever. You talk to doctors, patients are rude and demanding of professional doctors. Any sphere of life, he has made this behavior normalized. And it is something that is going to have to be dealt with for years and decades, probably.
There seems to be, and again, this is appearance from 1,000. What's that tired cliche from 20,000 feet or 30,000 feet? One of those things in a meeting where you roll your eyes, whether you roll your eyes or not. But from that distance, from outside the Beltway, there seems to be a lack of a center, a cohesive leadership. Who are the people to go to in the Democrat Party who are going to be the message givers? Because it's not Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
I remember Senator Durbin being on here with me, and during a break, and I don't know that I have the right to say this, but I will. During a break, he said, Bernie Sanders isn't saying anything he hasn't been bellowing from the back of the cafeteria for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So the Democrats have an image that everything should be free, that the government should take care of all of my problems, all of those things. And that's an image that has to be beaten back, and I don't see anybody addressing it.
Well, I think there are.
Because it's not true. Because, by the way, it's a myth. It's not true. All Democrats don't believe that.
No.
But that's the image. That's the stick.
Yeah, that's become, and this is what I was talking about when I think the Trump era has, radicalized this left, where more people have moved to that Bernie Sanders position. But I still don't think it's the majority position in the Democratic Party. I think it's going to be really interesting when we do get to 28, how these fissures play out in this primary. Who's going to own that lane? And
right.
Who's going to own the other lane? And are they going to cannibalize each other to end up with an unelectable nominee? But look, we've got some powerful voices. You've got Josh Shapiro. You've got Rahm. You've got Governor Pritzker. You've got others who aren't so far left, who understand that you can push principles without saying that government should pay for everything and the rich need to be taxed into oblivion. Like, that's not a governing philosophy. So I think that there are voices, but what happens in this era, this very well, is the most radical voices are the ones that get in the political arena on social media. Spectacle is what sells. Unlike shows like this, it's the fighting, it's the antagonism.
Right.
Clicks. So the rest of the group kind of exits the public stage, right, and goes to the sidelines, while the loudest voices on the left and the right argue with each other.
So you brought up a couple of names, and again, we don't want to focus on 2028, but just for the sake of where the party's going, I like the governor of California, and I think he's an interesting guy and a handsome fella, and he's got interesting things to say. I think he spends too much time talking about how Trump is a bad guy. Mm-hmm. Does he water down his message by doing that?
Well, he's been successful if you just in the sort of political ecosystem in launching himself to kind of the top of the pile this early out by taking this very strident anti-Trump position, almost trying to beat Trump back at his game. At first, I thought it was a little thirsty, kind of felt a little...
Good for you for pulling that one. Nicely done. We're both too old to use that, and you did it nicely.
Did I do that? Did I get that in all right?
Well done.
But I have to say, I think I was wrong. I mean, it's worked for him tactically. It's worked for him in kind of pushing him to the front of the pack right now. Again, I don't know that it's sustainable, but we're going to find out. So credit to him.
If it's not, and can a governor of California win the race? Is it a cliche to say that Californians can't get elected because the rest of the country hates California?
I don't know. We've had California presidents. I know it was a different era, but we've had Nixon, we had Reagan. So I don't think. I think it's a little bit reductionist to say we can't have someone from California. I do think, given the narrowness of the Electoral College, you do want to have that advantage of somebody who can swing one of those, kind of swingish states, like a Pennsylvania, like a Michigan, like a Wisconsin, like a Georgia. But I don't think that's a reason not to nominate someone.
And of course, we're talking about Gavin Newsom, for those of you who missed the memo. Moving back across the country here before we get to the governor and all of his money, what about the former mayor of Chicago? I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
I think his balance of being a complete pain in the ass and doing the job he did here and knowing the fight from being chief of staff, from being in Congress, all of that, he could be a very viable candidate. But he has played the middle quite a bit. Is Rahm in the race?
I mean, sure seems like it to me. I mean, all the moves he's making sort of seems like a guy that is running for president. And I think if you look at it on paper, mayor, congressman, chief of staff, ambassador, like that resume is pretty strong. Now add in kind of the knife fighting political operative that we know Rahm has been his whole career. I think people underestimate him at their peril. I always have thought that. And I think in this moment where Democrats really want somebody who can fight back in this moment, they don't want somebody who's going to cower or somebody who isn't afraid to say controversial things. He's got a lot going for him in this. Will he ultimately win? Again, I retired from the prediction business, but I would not underestimate him.
And you mentioned a couple of governors. Let me throw a couple more in. Wes Moore in Maryland, Andy Beshear in Kentucky. Yep. Doesn't get much redder than Kentucky, and Andy Beshear is one as a Democrat and serving well there, and seems to be fairly popular. Of all the Democrat governors, including Pritzker, does anybody have a leg up?
I think they're all. I mean, I think Newsom's kind of at the top of the pack, given what he's done.
Yeah.
And then I think you have this next level of the Pritzkers, Josh Shapiro's, Wes Moore's, Beshear's, Gretchen Whitmer are sort of in that category, kind of all looking to sort of break out of that lane. And then I also think, if we're going to be honest about this moment, I think that we can't not think expansively about how about someone who's not from the political sector,
right?
Isn't a governor or a senator. I don't have a name. I used to always kid Steve Kerr would be a great.
Steve Kerr would be a great guy. I've known him forever. He would be a fabulous candidate.
He's the leader. He's got principle. He's got values. And again, I'm just using him as a placeholder, but somebody who's the positive side of what Trump was, whether they're from the business community or sports or entertainment. But I think in some ways, the parties both have such negative vibes that I think it is not inconceivable that someone could come out of be an outsider and come in and really take over the Democratic Party. I don't see it. I don't know what that name is right now. But I also would say to you, the last several nominees that we've had, not counting presidents for re-election, 2 years out, you didn't necessarily know that who was going to be the nominee. And sometimes these things, as I've always said, Steve, once the voters get involved, things get a little crazy.
Right. The last thing we need is voters, which is a perfect segue into my sermon, which I won't spend a lot of time on, but Eric's gotten a headache for me for years talking about turnout and why turnout matters, because we have lost we've lost the plot in this country because we don't teach civics in school anymore. And people don't fully understand the primary system. So if you stand in line on election day in November, you'll constantly hear, well, I've been thinking about it a long time, but look who we ended up with. How do we end up with these two? Well, the way you end up with these two is that you didn't vote in the primary. You don't have to like the primary system. It's a bad system. But the primary determines who gets there. Think of it in Super Bowl week, which is where we are right now. The primary is the playoffs. The Super Bowl is election day. Well, you can't get to the Super Bowl election day without winning the primary. How do you get more people to show up on primary day?
Well, you have talked about it forever, and I've agreed with you forever. I think we have to do our best public service to get people to participate. But I think there are structural things we could do. I think if you go to these what's called jungle primaries, like California now has, where there's no party primaries, where everyone's thrown into the mix, you tend to end up sometimes with more sort of middle of the road candidates. I think ranked choice voting, which is happening in some places, Maine has it to some extent, Alaska has it to some extent, also leads to some of that structural change. That doesn't necessarily get more people out, but I think it's the kind of reform that says it's not just controlled by the partisans on both sides. Your voice does matter, and you should play, as you said, in the conference championship game before you get to the Super Bowl.
The idea that the government should nationalize elections is specifically to save Trump. It's insane. What he did in Georgia is insane. However, the state parties that control Texas as hard as they do as Republicans and Democrats as hard as they do in Illinois, they do a disservice to the larger voice of the people by having that tight control. Is there any way for the government in a non-Trump world to be more involved, to have a more unified approach to this stuff, and to minimize the damage that these local parties can do?
I mean, with technology, we're able to transfer trillions of dollars every day.
Right. Why can't we vote online?
Why? Well, I'm just saying as an example to make it secure and give people confidence and be able to do it in ways that we sort of unify the systems, even if the states and the localities are still running it. But the problem is, and this is where I'm going to put my partisan hat on, the Republican Party has been very clear that they can't win elections if they don't rig them, if they don't keep people from voting.
It's
They
true.
have laws that make it harder for people in minority communities to participate. They've tried to cut down on mail-in ballots. They were freaked out during COVID when so many people voted by mail in 2020, and we had these huge levels of participation. And they said candidly, not even in closed rooms, that if we don't do something about this, we won't win elections. So I think, one party is much more for opening up the process, and one party is for holding on to their desperate, pathetic power right now.
And did you ever think you and I would live long enough to see the toughest guy in the Republican Party to be Marjorie Taylor Greene?
I'm so conflicted about that one, Steve. Like, do I root for her? Or do I not root for her?
Oh, I do 100%. She is an absolute hero from the absolute 0 point. Yeah, we all agreed on one thing, and that's that she should keep her mouth shut because she was insane.
Right.
And yet here she is, the sole person standing up for what's right in the Republican Party. It's crazy.
It's pretty remarkable. It really is. And I will give her credit. And I've heard from members of Congress who were part of that hearing when the Epstein victims testified, Steve.
Right.
Who said, I don't particularly believe in conspiracies and big international syndicates and stuff, but this goes deep and it's awful and it's outrageous when there's 1,000 women and girls who were victims,
right,
and billions of dollars transferred. And the fact that she took her stand on this shows you what a fraud Trump is. And I do give her credit for saying, I'm fighting for these victims, and it's outrageous that they're being covered up.
Do you have a sense if it's moving Republicans? I mean, the media message nightly is, this is the one. This is the one. And we've heard this is the one since Trump opened his mouth and said McCain's not a hero. We've heard this is the one that's going to take him down. Is this the one?
I don't think so. I think if it's anything, it's the murders in Minnesota. And the next 2 weeks, as they negotiate this funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security, is going to be fascinating. And, we had a lot of clients that voted against that yesterday, would rather shut down the government than try to negotiate with terrorists, which is what we're going to have. And I think, you know how Trump does this. He's going to try to get everything he can. But this is where I think we will see how much heat are Republicans feeling that they have to really rein in this personal police force that Trump's created.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. And former Chicago police superintendent Gary McCarthy made a good point. He goes, the camouflage isn't a great idea in an urban setting. He said, we really don't need the camouflage. And I pointed out, maybe they should dress as buildings if they want to hide. It's just not great. Not great. Before we go, we have a mayoral election in about a year in Chicago.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal because it's the city of Chicago. Rahm Emanuel, going back to him for a second, told me once, he said, I was chief of staff, I was in Congress, and I've had a busy life. But he said, there's no job I love more that was also as hard as being the mayor of Chicago. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal for this city to get it right. Any early, in keeping in mind you're not in the prediction business, any early interesting candidates out there?
There's a lot of people that have put their name out, and there's a lot of people who other people have put their names out. I mean, Congressman Quigley has put his name out there.
He's terrific. He really is.
Susana Mendoza has put her name out there. Obviously, we have the incumbent mayor who seems like he's telling people he's going to be running again. There's a couple of lobbyists and sort of second-tier candidates. And then, there's some of the statewide electeds. Alexi Janulius, who we've worked with for years, a personal friend. A lot of people have urged him to do it. He's running for Secretary of State re-elect right now. I don't know whether he ultimately will, but there's a lot of people that think he should, and he could put together that kind of business, labor, progressive, moderate coalition. So, it's a year from now, literally, like I think the 23rd of February, maybe, would be the first round. So we're not very far away. And I think as soon as the November elections, midterms over, we're going to be right in the middle of that.
It's great of you to do this and take the time to do this. And it's great to reconnect. Once again, we should say that you told me something before I hit record, that the reason your complexion is dark and mine is pale. I said that I've been indoors too long, but why is yours darker?
Well, we're in the middle of primary season in Illinois and Texas and Maine and a whole bunch of places. So, we're a little busy. And
So your blood pressure is running about what, 200 over 250?
it's like 350 over 100. So I've got the defibrillator over here.
Right, right. As a good family member, anything your brother's doing you want to plug?
Yeah, there's actually a new show. It's called Audacity. It was one of the creators of Succession. It's going to be on Bravo. The trailers are already online. You can go look at them. He's got a great part in it. I think.
And he is, give him the name.
The show is called Audacity.
And what's his stage name?
His stage name is Paul Adelstein. So
Paul Adelstein.
Also his birth name.
Also his birth name. Yeah, I was thinking he used a different name. But you'll know the face. He's one of those guys who goes, oh, it's that guy. Because he's done a lot of things.
Yeah, for sure.
God bless you and your family. We didn't talk about it, but condolences on the loss of your dad, who had a great life and a long run.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it.
And let's do this again.
Great to see you.
Great to see you. Thanks. Thank you, Ross Cochran, for producing Live from my office. Thank you, Eric Adelstein, for guesting. And thank you for listening. Oh, and thank you, Woody Buick, for sponsoring what we do around here. Woody?
Woody here. Why Woody, you ask? Chicagoland's top-selling Buick GMC dealer with the largest Buick GMC inventory in stock. Over 1,000 of the hot new Buick and GMCs to choose from. Search Woody Buick GMC, Naperville and Gurnee, and see for yourself. Easy as 1, 2, 3. Click, shop, and drive home today. No shortage at Woody Buick GMC, Naperville and Gurnee. Woody needs your trade-in today. Hurry for best selection at year-end. Hope to see you soon, Woody. GMC, we are professional grade.
Join me again for Anything But Politics. Oh, coming soon, the golf show. And also more Live from my office. My name is Steve Cochran. Your name is, I'd like to meet you. So don't forget to send in an email to thecochranshow@gmail.com with the phrase it pays. Is it over yet? And maybe win an app gift card. See you next time on Live from my office.